Welcome back to another episode of Should I Stay or Should I Go? In our last episode, we discussed my recent book that just hit the shelves. And today I would like to introduce Allison's book, A Woman's Guide to Surviving Divorce. So today we're going to talk to Allison and we're going to find out more about her book and her story and who she wrote it for. So, Allison, with that, tell us your story. What happened that inspired you to start writing this book?
Elizabeth, I am like so many other women that I was raised to believe that when you got married, it was a lifetime commitment and that it was just going to happen. My parents were married for 56 years. So that was my frame of reference. And there I was in my 40s, getting ready to and going through my second divorce. And my whole goal in life was to be, happy, happily married, raise some kids, live the life, the American dream. And it hadn't happened for me. I had the job, I had all of the pieces, but they just weren't working. And I knew the common denominator in all of it was me. And so I said, I still wanted to find that love of my life and to be married and to be happy. And since I couldn't seem to do it yet, I said, well, I'm going to go look for a book. So I went to the bookstore, back when you could actually go to the bookstore and peruse the aisles and look at the books. And there were all these shelves on how to plan a wedding and wedding gowns and cakes and all the good stuff. And this tiny little section of books there on women getting divorced and what women should do. So I tried to get some books so I could read because I'm a reader and a writer, and I love to read and get help. And I started reading these books. And well, first of all, there were some written by men, and my answer was no, thank you. I'm getting divorced. I don't need a man telling me what to do right now. And then I got the ones written by women. And at the time, they were either they had an axe to grind, or, my personal favorite was the one written by Miss Universe, who was struggling over which of their five mansions she would end up with, and that she knew she had a bad day when she went to the airport without makeup. And I was like, ooh, I have nothing in common with Miss Universe. This isn't working. So, and with the lack of anything to read to help me through it, I started writing. And I just started writing, journaling my thoughts, my experiences, my angst. And at some point, I wanted to write when I traveled, because I traveled for a living at the time and I was always on an airplane. You can't work on your business computer, especially when you work for a bank. So I bought myself an iPad, and there I'd be on the plane typing away on my little iPad with a fancy little keyboard, and I'm typing away. And if there was a woman sitting within 3 rows of me, she figured out what I was writing about, looking over my shoulder, and started talking to me. And so over the course of a year, I had hundreds, if not more than that, women tell me their stories, share their advice, tell me what happened to their friends, share their fears, their griefs, all the things that happened with their kids. And over that time, as I was writing, all of these stories coalesced. And I started noticing the patterns and the fact that as women, there's that common experience that we go through when our marriage fails. And so my book, as I wrote it, not intending to publish, but just intending to write the story of what happens to a woman when we go through divorce, and the emotional and the grieving process that we go through, and then how we pull ourselves back up and rebuild and recreate lives that have. So that's kind of how my book came to be.
Well, I love, when I started reading it, I love that you can just tell that it comes from your heart, and, and it comes from strength, but yet sharing your pain, which is sometimes kind of a hard combination to weave together. But it certainly speaks to what each of us are feeling. So I think everybody wants us to like put on the happy face, put on our makeup, run out and be a cheerleader and happy, but we've got to grieve. And I think you give people permission to grieve and let them know that that's completely normal. It's healthy. And I love your writing style. It's just so soothing. So what
You
is
know, it's
the,
interesting.
go ahead.
Oh, you brought up grieving, and I was just going to say what's so funny is so many women say, well, I didn't even like the guy. Why would I grieve? And it's such a common woman thing that it's whether you had an ideal marriage or not. When you got married, you had an idea of what your marriage was going to be in your mind. And when your marriage ends, that is no longer a possibility. And that is what you grieve, is you grieve your dream. So even if you're listening to this saying, I don't even like this guy, which, you know, that's kind of where we end up right before we get divorced. We don't usually like them very much. Cut yourself some slack. You are going to grieve and you deserve to grieve. And you do have things to grieve because you got married with all the best intents with a big dream. And that dream didn't happen.
That is so true because you're grieving the death of the marriage, the death of the dream, the death of all the dreams inside the dream. Because it's not just
Mm-hmm.
like one big dream. There's a bunch of little mini dreams inside there.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is the big question or the big fear or the big aha moment that you speak to in this book that I think women will resonate with?
Well, and I loved when you talked about your book, you know, the fear of finances and not being able to manage your money. In my mind, there's a lot of fears that come up when we get married, but they have two main bases. Number one, am I going to be a bag lady? Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but given the groups of people that I used to lecture to, some women, you know, with $20 million net worth, and yet still if something happened, they feared that they would not have enough money and they would become a bag lady. So it is a very big fear and a real fear. And then the other fear is no one will ever love me again. And so between our two books, I think we cover both of those big fears. You help people understand that they can get a hold of and manage their money and live very, very comfortably and very happily. And the other is, yes, you will be loved again. Maybe you don't feel lovable right now, but there's a path to get there and we will get you there.
That's a great message. Is really at the end of the day, the most important thing in life is our relationships. And no one wants to have a mental picture in their mind that they're going to end up being not only the bag lady, but the bag lady that's sitting in a chair in her living room all by herself for the rest of her life with nobody to talk to and no friends and no boyfriends and no kids and no everything, which we tend to do that. We over dramatize our situation. So relationships, I think, are key to everything. So did writing this book, so you wrote the book, you weren't planning on publishing it, you were doing it, I guess, as self-therapy or just as an exercise. What shifted? What happened that caused you to move into the publishing aspect of it?
Well, it's a long story that I can tell in a couple of short pieces. I wrote the book, the bulk of the book, back in the early 2000s when I was going through my divorce. I wanted to have a happy ending at the end. I wanted it to be something that showed the light at the end of the tunnel, which, you know what, you can't write it till you live it. So I had to go back and I had to live. And so I rebuilt my life and I started living, and about 8 years into it, all of a sudden one day I went, wait a minute, I am ready to write that ending. I can write that ending now. And so I went ahead and I wrote the last three chapters of the book, Laugh, Live, and Love. And as I closed my computer at 2 a.m. in the morning, I looked online and the only person online was my boss. And I sent her a little message and I just said, hey, just had to tell somebody and you're the only one up. I just finished my book. And she was like, what? I never knew you were writing one. And I'm like, well, I did. And at that point in time, I had just completed my task and I put it away. I was happy. As life would have it, a month later, I met the love of my life, and we've been together ever since, which made it wonderful. All that stuff that went into writing those three happy chapters, I now got to live. And so it just sat happily on my computer for another 10 years. And at that time, I had the chance to leave the corporate world, to do what I truly wanted, to do something different, to not travel, to get off the airplanes, And to do something that I felt in here was going to make a difference. And because I was a public speaker by trade, I said, I'm going to be a public speaker, and my book was going to be my content. It was going to be my topic material so that I could go out and public speak. So I went through the drill, and it is a job to get a book published. I will tell you that. Did all the work, got the book published in 2019, published it in July of 2019. In October, I was at a local county fair type thing, and I had my booth up and my book out, and I had my little computer so they could watch the video on my book. And somebody came up and they were asking me about the book, and I said, well, here it is. You can buy it on Amazon. And as I pressed that button on October 18th, it was #1 in women's literature, which
Wow.
was
How
exciting,
exciting.
exciting, all on its own. And I had no idea. So I had the best day of my life, standing out there talking to women, telling them about the book, encouraging them to take some control and move forward. And that was the end of 2019. And we all know what happened in 2020. So all of those speaking jobs kind of went away. But as life would have it, it always works out for the best. And in the process of promoting and marketing my book, I had a lot of people tell me I should be a coach. My degree is in psychology. I've always been a mentor and got involved in leadership programs at work. So it just was a natural fit to coach women through the process of divorce and rebuilding their lives. And now that's what I do, is I coach women through rebuilding their lives.
Well, I think it's fabulous, and I love how your coaching business is about recreation, because we all have the ability to recreate our our right now and our future. We just have to be ready, I guess.
Mhm, mhm. And take control.
Absolutely. So what would be the one takeaway that you would want women to have when reading your book?
Well, and I would say I would have to say three things because one just wouldn't be enough. Number
Okay,
one,
three things. Top three.
three things. Number one, like you said, and I have to echo you when you said it. I just was like, yes, you're not alone. I want women to know that they are not the first woman that's ever felt this way, and they won't be the last. They are not the only person that has gone through what they're going through, and that there are resources out there everywhere that they can tap in. Number two, no, you're not okay. I don't know why anybody thinks you should be. You are going through a divorce. Your whole world is shattered. From soup to nuts, everything's changing. No, you're not okay, but you will be. It's going to come back together, and you will be okay. And you can hang on to that. And it's okay to grab a box of tissues as often as you need to and let it all loose, because right now, no, you're not okay. And the last thing, again, we got to end on that positive note, is that once you get through this tough stuff, and you will get through this, a whole new life is going to open up, and all kinds of wonderful and amazing things are going to happen. And the only question you're going to ask yourself is, gee, why didn't I do this sooner? Because you're going to find out that life can be everything you dreamed it can be and more.
Yeah, I've heard so many people say, "Gosh, I wish I'd done this sooner," or
Mhm.
or just like, "I wish I'd taken control of my life back," because I think a lot of women just give it away. So, well, this has been great
Mhm.
learning more about your book and the story behind it. And it's a great read. I've read it, and so I would highly recommend it. Uh, Listeners, you can get this on Amazon. You can get both of our books on Amazon, but hers, once again, A Woman's Guide to Surviving Divorce. So go out and get your copies now. So, Allison, any parting words you want to share?
Just thank you, Elizabeth, for asking some good questions here. And just know that if you're out there and any of this pertains to you, there are resources, there is help. There are things like our podcast. Please reach out. I know you're afraid right now. I was too, but you will be pleasantly surprised to find out that there are plenty of people out there, could even be the next door neighbor, that will pick you up off the ground and help you get going in the right direction.
Yeah, people love to help people, but we have to ask. We have to let them know we need our help.
And that's a big woman thing. We love to help each other, but we have to ask, and we don't like to ask for help. This time,
Exactly.
it's okay. So go for it.
Exactly. So please be sure to share this podcast with your friends or anyone that you know that might benefit from it. Be sure to give us a like, a follow, or subscribe. And also look us up on social media and follow us there. Allison's very active on LinkedIn. I'm going to get better at it. But you can find us on all the different channels or networks, I should say. And be sure to share this information, because I know that there's a lot of women out there who need some help and don't know where to start. So please share this podcast with your friends who are going through tough times.